Walton Bay, a novel based in the area of Kingston, Ontario in the late 1800s. This story was inspired from the desire to see Canada return to its simple roots after seeing such division during the pandemic in recent years. Available now on Amazon, this book will help fund our efforts here at Momentum Canada, since we are not government funded. Rather than just ask for money, I wanted to give you something wholesome for you to enjoy as well. So place your order today and enjoy a great story for such a time as this. All right, how's it going, everybody? Brandon McCaskill here with Momentum Canada. This is my segment of my channel where I call it Momentum Monday, and we have a chat. We talk about some of the things that have happened throughout the week. You guys bring a download of how you've absorbed the latest and the greatest, and we just have a grand old chat about it. So if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share this out with your friends and family, and we'll get started. All right, so I want to address a comment that was already here before I got started. This is from AB. He says, when will this criminal go to life in prison? So he's probably referring to the title of this, which is Real Court Against the Use of the Emergencies Act, Trump Drama Indictment, and Are We Self-Aware? So I'm not sure if he's referring to Justin Trudeau or Trump, but we'll get into that. So make sure you say hello in the comments. And let me know where you're listening from. That's always interesting. Sometimes I get people from overseas watching. That's kind of cool. Yeah, so let's get started. Actually, you know what? Before I do, I wanted to, and I just brought that up on the screen here. This is from me. It's an invite link for freedom fighting channels. So if there's some freedom fighting channels that you like to watch, that you enjoy watching, I want you to send them this link. It's an invitation, which I'll show you. I'll bring it up on the screen right now. It's from Awake Canada. And see if I can share this with you. All right, so this is from Awake Canada. Let's listen to this. All right, so there we go. I thought that was pretty fascinating. And to me, now I don't know too much about Awake Canada. I've seen them on Facebook. They post quite a lot of different people's stuff, which is really, really cool. I've seen Mr. Sunshine Baby being shared on there. I think some of Clyde Do Something. they seem to be a pretty helpful organization, Awake Canada. Again, I'm not too sure about them, and I don't think I have anything to be concerned about because they're not within this offer. There's nothing saying that they'll try to change my content or anything like that. So that's pretty good. So let's say good morning to Rob. Rob Hellfire. Good morning. He says I'll share it right away. BRB. Awesome. Yeah, share it out to any channel that you enjoy watching. Make sure they get the invitation. I'm not too sure if it's too late. I did mine just before the holiday here, so I made sure that that I submitted. And how it works is essentially and the initial confusion I had was setting up my Rumble account. So if you're a freedom fighter content creator, this will probably be helpful for you to know. But you got to make sure that you are subscribed to a starter package on Rumble. I was on the free package, which it only requires, I think it was 30 subscribers to be able to go live. Um, so I tried upgrading to the basic package, which that was the initial instructions. And if you actually Google it, it'll tell you, it'll give you access to the feeds that Awake Canada needs through the basic package. But I found out that that wasn't the case, and I needed to get the starter package, which it's costing me $25 a month. I can cancel it at any time, but I felt it was worth checking this whole thing out. Seems promising. And if it goes through and if everything goes according to what they're advertising it as, I see this as a dodge to Bill C11 because it's going to be on people's Roku devices. And he talked about Apple TV and Fire Stick. So sure, Trudeau can mess with the algorithms and the recommendation sections on YouTube and other online platforms. But if people are on their Roku devices and Apple TV devices and Fire Stick, the app, I don't know what the app's going to be called, maybe Awake Canada or a Freedom Fighter channel, it's going to just be in front of millions of people. So I think this is, unless I'm mistaken, this is kind of a brilliant way to dodge Bill C11. I can't speak this morning. Bill C11. So yeah, anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, now we can move on. All right, so like I said, the title of this live stream today is Real Court Against the Use of the Emergencies Act, Donald Trump Drama, and Are We Self-Aware? So let's talk about the real court against the use of the Emergencies Act. Rob says shared. Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. Len B says, here's the correct link for your book. Okay. The link you have posted doesn't work. It sounds like I got to update some links. That's weird how they age, apparently. That's weird. All right, so let's get into this, what's going on here with the real court and the use of the Emergencies Act. So we all were watching the Emergencies Act Commission with Justice Paul Ralao, and he came to his conclusion that the invocation was justified. And we had back and forth on who this Justice Paul Ralao really was. Was he related to Justin Trudeau? I'm not convinced he was, just because it's hard to find that out. What I do know is that he's a liberal, handpicked judge by Trudeau. So that's worrisome just off the get-go. And I know that he was in John Turner's pocket back in the day. So from the very start of that whole Emergencies Act Commission, I was always skeptical and never had faith. But what I was looking forward to during it was the opportunity to present our side of the story, the trucker side of the story, the organizer side of the story, which I think it was. It was a great opportunity. And Paul Ralao actually said that at the beginning of the hearings. He said this is I think he said a truth-seeking operation or something along those lines. And but so to me, if that's your goal to just truth seeks, then I don't see, and if your decision at the end of the day as the justice bears no weight and is not binding at all, I don't see the point in coming out with your opinion on it, because that's essentially all we saw was Paul Ralao's opinion. So it wasn't very useful. And so what's happening right now is a real federal court is looking at this. And so I watched an interview, and I'll share with you my screen. An interview with Clyde Do Something and a lawyer named, I think her name is Eva Chipayak, Chipayak or Chipiak. Anyway, she's a lawyer, and she kind of explained how this is different from the commission, and she explained that this is actual this will actually be very binding because it's a federal court. It's not like um, a lawsuit where it's just two parties arguing against each other in terms of loss or of work or injury. But it's essentially when you go to a judge to specifically review a law made by the government. And according to her, she said you have only 30 days to go to court and challenge the law. And so that was filed in March of last year. So in March of last year, it was filed before the revocation. Um, and so essentially, this case is asking this judge, which, by the way, my understanding is this judge, who his name is escaping me at the moment, and I'll find that in a moment. Um, but he mentioned that he's an ex-trucker, so that'll be interesting. And I actually encourage you to go over and support Clyde Do Something. I don't want to rip him off, but you watch that interview. It's very, very interesting. But I want to point out something interesting that this Eva woman pointed out that this judge had said, because these government lawyers, and we hear this all the time. They bring forward this MOU. Is that what it's called? I'm blanking on the acronym. Just give me 1 second. I had it open. MOU. What does that stand for? Memorandum of Understanding that the truckers had, right? And so they used that as evidence that the truckers weren't going away and that they were demanding um, their voices to be heard. And they used this against this judge. And apparently, this judge said, "You know what? We're not even looking at that." He said, "All that is, if anything, is the lack of education in how our law works." So, um, it's interesting that this judge has that attitude. Now, let me find. I'm pretty sure I have it open. Yeah, I do. Here we go. His name is Justice Richard Mosley or Mosley. So he's an older fella, Canadian federal court trial judge who has background in national security interests and has taken a role in hearing a number of Canadian anti-terrorism cases, including blah blah blah. Okay, so I like his attitude so far. I like the fact that he was a trucker in his time. Um, at least that's my understanding. But yeah, I'm interested to see how far this goes. So let me take a minute here to read what you guys are saying here. Hellfire says the little puppet. It would seem they are not actually related, but they have close ties. Yeah, that's my general feeling. I mean, since I can't prove it, I just rather just not say that anymore. So, um, if I'm ever in legal trouble, this is Lynn B, by the way, she says, do I get to pick my own judge and jury to ensure I don't get convicted? Good question. Good question. Chip yuck. Is that how you say it? Chip yuck. Interesting. I've been supporting Clyde for 2+ years. Awesome. Yeah, he's a good dude. I had him on the show. He's just very down to earth, good human being. He genuinely wants to help people understand politics because it gets messy and it's complicated. And I definitely get that feeling from him. I don't get that from everybody. You know what I mean? A lot of people are on here for the views and for the fame and glory, but I don't think that's the case for him. James Bowder wrote the MOU. Correct. Yes. And so, I mean, I was watching global news in response to this real court that's taking a look at this and answering those questions, which, let me bring up. I don't wanna make you guys just look at my face all day. So, yeah, let's give this a read. This is, I don't wanna watch the video. I watched this morning. It's very tainted. This guy's, like, he's, like, cheerleading for Paul Relau, saying, "Oh, yeah, he made the right decision, blah, blah, blah." So a national civil liberties group told a federal judge Monday the federal government has not clearly spelled out proper legal justification for its use of the Emergencies Act early last year in response to protests in the national capital and at key border points. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association was among the groups and individuals in federal court to argue Ottawa lacked sound statutory grounds to invoke the emergency measures. The government contends the measures taken to deal with the pan-Canadian emergency situation were targeted, proportional, time-limited, and compliant with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They weren't. They weren't at all. In fact, the guy who wrote the darn thing, was saying that it wasn't. So, yeah, this whole article is pretty slanted. The Public Order Emergency Commission, a mandatory review that takes place after invocation of the Emergencies Act, found the government met the very high threshold for using the law. Well, of course you did. Of course you did, because you hand selected a judge. That's we didn't expect anything otherwise. At least I didn't. Now, the legal arguments for and against the decision are being heard in a court of law. The 3-day hearing began Monday with the federal government's reasons why the matter should not be in court at all, given that the emergency measures have been revoked. Why is that their argument? This whole, it's moot. Like, it's in the past. Like, if you murder someone and say, that was yesterday, I didn't murder him today. Like, that's not even an argument. And it's the ultimate gaslighting, I think. Justice Richard Mosley, there he is, intends to rule at a later date on that point and proceed with hearing the arguments of the various parties on the merits of the overall case. In early February 2022, downtown Ottawa was filled with protesters, many in large trucks that rolled into town beginning in late January. All right, so yeah, we know the rest of this story. There was one thing I read this morning that I wanted to touch on. Oh, right here. The influx, including some participants with roots in the far-right movement, that's us guys, apparently, prompted many businesses to shut their doors and aggravated residents. So listen to the language. Like, if you're trying to be a journalist and get the objective point of view here, which it's just so clear that they're not, they're using language like aggravated residents with noise pollution. Now, there's a comma there. So is it noise and pollution or noise pollution? Or are they talking about pollution of the trucks? Because I don't know. And harassing behavior. Now, was there instances of harassing? Now, I saw and I heard about stories, and I can see that it being a reality because I've met them here locally. Like, at my own city hall flag gathering, protest, whatever you want to call it, last winter, we had a gentleman say some comments to someone just walking by saying, "Why are you wearing that mask?" Like, and he was nice about it, but at the same time, my attitude is leave them alone. If they want to wear a mask, let them. I can see people feeling that as harassment. Um, so was that type of stuff going on? I wouldn't call it harassment because, like, what's the definition of harassment? Let's look that up. Um, what does it mean exactly? Harassment is a form of discrimination. Okay, that fits. It includes any unwanted physical or verbal behavior that offends or humiliates you. Okay. Generally, harassment is behavior that persists over time. Serious one-time incidents can also sometimes be considered harassment. Okay. All right. So I would say that definitely counts. Let's not harass people on the sidewalk. Other than that, other than that, which it's not against the law to tell people to not follow along with the false narratives. Like the guy that I saw, he was very sweet about it. His tone of voice was very polite, and it was like he was trying to engage the person, like, "Why are you wearing that?" Like, he was curious. So, just imagine a little bit of a more zealous freedom fighter who was already out yelling and screaming with a flag, and then mixing that in with a comment towards someone like that, I could see how that could easily get out of hand. But again, for the most part, we all know it was a huge, peaceful protest. It was a party, it was a celebration, which we'll get into. House of Bad Influence says the honking will continue until freedom improves. LOL. Vikram says propagandists well paid to sell the narrative. Defund the CBC and post their names up publicly for misleading of Canadian people. I agree. Yes. Imagine misusing taxpayers' monies. I can imagine. We're all living it. So let me take a look here. Read through that. We already know who the justice is. All right, so let's I'll share this with you. Just another article here. This is from Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Federal court hearing on challenges to the constitutionality of the Emergencies Act invocations start today in Ottawa. So this was posted April 3rd. We are April 10th now, so it's since then concluded. Ottawa, Ontario, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms announces that the federal court hearing of the Jost et al. V. Canada constitutional challenge to the invocation of the Emergencies Act starts today in Ottawa and is scheduled to conclude on April 5th. Canadians can view this public hearing here. Okay, so I didn't realize that until now. Let's see if they have them available. Webinar is over. You can register now. If you have any questions, please contact webinar host. Okay. So it doesn't look like they are available publicly, but that's all right. On February 14th, 2020, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet declared a public order emergency under the Emergencies Act, the successor to the War Measures Act. The government then used this declaration to shut down the Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa, including by prohibiting protests in front of the Parliament and freezing the bank accounts of protesters and donors. On February 24th, 2022, a legal and constitutional challenge was filed against the government's use of the Emergencies Act in federal court on behalf of four Canadians, Jeremiah Jost, Edward Cornell, Harold Rostow, and Vincent Curses. Each of these individuals were directly affected by the government's use of the Emergencies Act. Jeremiah Loss, as described as his affidavit, is a 28-year-old contractor and volunteer firefighter who was concerned about the harms of COVID lockdowns, including the separation of his family caused by cross-border vaccine mandates. He felt compelled to join the Freedom Convoy from Alberta to Ottawa, where he participated in the protests. Jeremiah's evidence before the court includes his description of protests as being entirely peaceful, a family-friendly atmosphere, and beautiful, diverse, and inclusive to all. His affidavit testimony further confirmed that an emergency lane was open the entire time on Wellington Street. His evidence is that on February 18th, 2022, he observed the tactical police advance with riot gear, gas masks, tasers, batons, pepper spray, flash grenades, rifles, horses, and snipers on rooftops surrounding the protesters. Jeremiah provided the court with a video he personally recorded of police horses trampling protesters and observers, including an elderly Indigenous woman with a walker. After observing the terrifying and excessive police actions toward peaceful protesters, including police beating, kneeing, and striking protesters with the butt end of rifles, Jeremiah testified that he and his wife left the Ottawa protest deprived of his constitutional right to protest. This is interesting. So I'm reading about this for the first time. Edward Cornell is a decorated 64-year-old retired military veteran from New Brunswick who had served as an auxiliary OPP officer from 2013 to 2015. As described in his sworn affidavit, he and his wife joined the Freedom Protest when the Freedom Convoy passed through Moncton on the way to Ottawa. Without warning, Mr. Cornell had his bank account and credit cards frozen, leaving him in a desperate financial position and unable to pay bills that were due. Already suffering from PTSD, the crackdown on peaceful protesters like himself by his government left him feeling terrified and financially vulnerable. All right, there's two more here. Vincent Curses, who was, who also provided a sworn affidavit. Let me take a drink here. Is a retired member of the Ontario Provincial Police, an exemplary service medal recipient, and former auxiliary liaison officer of the year. Mr. Gerses served as security and as a police liaison during the protests. After the Emergencies Act declaration, Mr. Gerses observed police officers in tactical gear striking protesters with the butt end of their rifles and with 36-inch long square-edged wooden batons. After Mr. Gerses' bank accounts and credit cards were frozen, he was only able to feed himself and make the 6-hour journey home thanks to the generosity of kind-hearted Canadians he didn't even know. And the last one is Reverend Harold Ristow, is an associate seminary professor, a former Canadian Armed Force chaplain, and a retired officer with Canadian Special Operations Forces Command, who also provided a sworn affidavit. Reverend Ristow led prayers at the National War Memorial and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier during the Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa. He has suffered significant personal and professional consequences because of the emergency measures taken by the Government of Canada. Subsequently, Ristow received threats to his life for his participation in the Freedom Convoy. All right, so before I move on, I want to read your guys' comments. Make sure I'm staying up to date with what you're saying. House of Bad Influence says, because why not, eh? FFS. Yep. Vikram says, that's right. Canadians were denied their right to protest. Terry, this is getting tiring. They've gone over this time after time by now. The libs are still screwing us in other ways. Let's move on to that. Well, what are you referring to? The whole situation, or because this is actually pretty big news that a federal court is now looking at it, because the Emergency Act Commission, it really was just a truth-seeking operation. It was just to get the stories out there. And then obviously the commissioner gives his advice. So to me, this is the fact that a federal judge is now asking the question, did they follow the criteria necessary to evoke it? Now, this is the one that's binding. So that'll be interesting. And it seems, just based on what I've heard the judge say, is that he's being pretty fair. He's being pretty level-headed about it. I'll put it that way. I shouldn't say fair because I haven't seen too much. He's being pretty level-headed just with the things he's saying. Vikram says, Canadians were abused, beat down, intimidated, and harassed by this government when protesting peacefully. Amounts to crimes against humanity. House of Bad Influence. Need more parades with pipes and drums. Tattoos were cool. Yeah. And one of the things that I liked from Keith Wilson, it was in his response to, I believe it was CBC, maybe CTV. They were interviewing him after the results of the commission came out. They wanted a response from him. And one of the things he said, it always mind baffled him that they never filed an injunction. Like, remember when they filed an injunction to stop the horns during the protest? Apparently, and I didn't know this was possible, but you can actually file an injunction for them to leave. So why that was never done, and it's beyond me, but that just goes to show me that there were steps that could have been taken before they did what they did. And so that's what this judge is going to be looking at, is did they meet the criteria? And that criteria makes sure that they cover all their bases first before coming to this very serious and essentially unprecedented move to evoke the Emergencies Act. Terry says, I'm referring to the way they're infringing on our right to free speech with laws like C11 for one. Yeah, I don't know if you caught me at the beginning, but there seems to be, I don't know if it'll be a solution, but from Awake Canada, they're offering channels like mine, which I'm already registered. Essentially, they take your your Rumble feed, and it's called your RSS, your MRSS feed, and they link it to what they're working on right now, which is to have an app on devices like Apple TV, Roku, Fire Stick. So if you're scrolling through and you see your like TSN, your YouTube apps, and your Netflix apps, and Disney Plus, you're going to be seeing a Awake Canada, or I think that's what it will be titled, or something along those lines. But we're going to have our own app where you go in and watch any channel you want. So that type of exposure, um, to me, and I could have this wrong, but is that a dodge to Bill C-11? Maybe, because it's directly linked. It's the RSS feed link on my Rumble channel that I gave them. And they're going to use that, and people are going to be watching through that app, but it's linked to my Rumble, so I'll still get those views on Rumble. But yeah. Chris Freestone, sorry, man, I forgot I was at House of Bad Influence. Okay, cool. You guys are just chatting. Vikram says the Canada Day parade should now include truckers who are at the convoy as heroes of this country and other real heroes. Yeah. Limby says what really rankles me and raises my ire to new levels is the fact that our concerns and desires as the taxpayers who pay their wages are never considered when making new rules and or laws. We don't matter. That's the point of it. Terry says that's smart. For every obstacles, there's a way to get around it. Yeah. It's, to me, it's pretty genius. I hope it works. I mean, I have nothing to lose. It was free. All I have to do, like, if you know somebody who creates content for freedom fighting for the freedom fighting movement, it will cost them $25 a month if they want to jump on board, because that's how much this package is on Rumble. It doesn't even go to Awake Canada. They're not taking anything. They just want the message out there. But unfortunately, to access that feed link, you need to have a starter package on Rumble, which is $25 a month. Well, I see Chris Freestone is in the chat, and I have something funny. I should share it. I'm not prepared to share it. I can, and he's given me permission to. He's got a pretty funny story that happened to him, and I believe it was his wife. I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, but I'm gonna dig into that right now. Vikram says exactly. It's a global influence and agenda, not what Canadians care or need. Harry and Ivanka from Belarus. Hello over there. Awesome. Great to see you, Harry and Ivanka. Terry says, if it means I can escape government censorship, I'll pay the $25. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I was paying the $10 membership anyway. It's you can have a free Rumble account because if you just want to stream, you only need, I think it's 30 subscribers to be able to stream. But if you want some more of the features, which I enjoyed, I got the $10 package, but that still wasn't enough to get that link that I needed for Awake Canada. So I had to upgrade to the starter package. So yeah. There's Chris. He said, do it. Yeah, I've been meaning to. And it's hard sometimes with the how short the streams are. I try to keep them under 2 hours, and sometimes I just don't have time. So let me bring that up. Just give me a second. You guys have a nice chat in the comments. He sent it to me via Facebook, so I just got to find it. Let me search his name here. Oh, that wasn't too difficult. There we go. So Nope, not there. I have I have just someone spamming me as I'm trying to do this, and their messages keep coming up. That's always fun. Chris, for some reason, I can't find. You had sent it to us through, Sirius for Sarnia, and that's not my page. And I was given access just to be able to look at it. But then it looks like that access has been taken away. So if you want to, on Facebook, send me those pictures again, I'll read it out loud. It was pretty funny. So I'll leave that with you. Rob Hellfire says, this dismissive attitude towards we the people used to be the way it was long ago, but we changed that and we'll change it again. They are not royalty. We are not subjects. They work for us. They need an annual reminder. The true power always resides with the people. We are the many. You're way better at this than me, man. Cool. Any wrong laws they pass through will have to be changed. Yeah. All right, let me. I wanted to keep reading that article because it was pretty darn good. I hadn't heard those affidavits before. That's pretty cool. So, in order for the government declaration to be legally justified under the Emergencies Act, the federal cabinet must have believed on reasonable grounds that there existed threats to the security of Canada so serious as to be a national emergency. So, to me, my understanding, there's two things you got to ask here. Was the crowds a threat? No, because it was largely peaceful. And the people harassing people saying, take your mask off, that could have been handled diplomatically with the powers that be, the powers that are available to the police. So they didn't need the Emergencies Act for that. And there was no instances. In fact, the crime rates dropped during the time of the protest. Criminal behavior just seemed to disappear around that time. So if it wasn't the crowds that were a threat, then obviously it's the trucks. So can we make the argument there? Is it the trucks blocking people's right to go to work? No, there was emergency lanes open. Did they barricade certain areas? At first, I think they did. And a lot of them took the fines, these bylaw fines of illegally parked. And that was something that they were willing to pay. Was it something that needed the Emergencies Act evoked? That's the question. Does a parking violation warrant that? I think that's pretty pathetic. And I wish I could have someone willing who takes that position, even if it's just a regular citizen who is well versed on this whole topic. I would like to have a conversation and have them look me in the eye and say that's a good argument. That because can you just imagine this old fart just won't move his car and he's parked in front of a fire hydrant and you say, get out of here. And you bring the cops, he still won't leave. And until you can you have to physically take a crane and move him. Like, is that guy that much of a threat that you have to evoke the War Measures Act, equating that to an insurrection or a invasion of a foreign enemy, equating it to that? That's laughable. It's laughable. But again, like I was saying about Keith Wilson, why didn't they evoke an injunction or file for an injunction when they could have? There were steps and power that they had that they didn't use. So this will be interesting. This is the official. This is the official hearing of this whole situation. What we saw before with the what's the acronym? POEC, the commission, whatever you want to call it. That was the unofficial. That was just the truth-seeking operation with an opinion attached to it at the end. So now we're getting to the official seal of the deal. Do I have hope in it? Of course. I always like to hold on to hope, but I'll be upset. I'll be upset if it shows anything but the truth, obviously. But I think it's something to look forward to and to pay attention to. I'll certainly be reporting on it. Vikram says, I was in the ground watching and there was no threat. You were on the ground watching. So you were in Ottawa and there was no threat. No live streams could catch a threat. The threats came from the law enforcement side. Well, thank you. Fighting Hate 202 says, not reading comments on Rumble? Well, let me do that. Give me 1 second. That's the kind of the, I guess, irritating thing about Rumble. Well, I always got to remember it's not as advanced as YouTube. There's not a whole lot more, well, first of all, popularity and then infrastructure behind Rumble. So one of the downfalls is that I can't hook the comments to StreamYard. So I have to open up separate video feeds, which I can do. Just give me a moment. Are my people on Rumble saying, hey? Let me check you guys out. Here we go. All right, so we got this is from the Rumble chat. Keck Vest says, hit the like button. Yep. The dude 2030 says, should have the results from the court just about the same time as Trudeau retires. Let's hope not. Keck Vest says, January 16th, 2021 was the first time government shut down protest Toronto, not the truckers in Ottawa. Interesting. Yeah. Right on. So let me make sure. I'll share my screen here again. We'll finish off that reading there. The term threats to the security of Canada is defined by the Canadian Security Intelligence Services Act and includes espionage or sabotage that is against Canada, foreign influence activities within or relating to Canada. It makes you laugh because it's just like you're comparing this to what we saw, like that commenter just said on the live streams. I think with Vikram, he said that. It was so peaceful. It was so loving. It's just laughable. Activities within or relating to Canada directed toward or in support of the threat or use of acts of serious violence against persons or property for the purpose of achieving a political, religious, or ideological objective within Canada or a foreign state. Or activities directed toward undermining by covert unlawful acts or directed toward intended ultimately to lead to the destruction or overthrow by violence of the constitutionally established system of government in Canada. It does not include lawful advocacy, protest, or dissent demonstrated peacefully. Now, here's what I'll say. This memorandum of understanding that said that we're not leaving until they're reversed. I would say because that's not how things work. You know, in terms of law, protests are to, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many signatures you get from people. That's just not how the law works. You can't demand things to change. I don't think that equals trying to overthrow the government because you're just going to protest, because that's what their threat was. If you don't change this law, we're not going to leave. Like that's not is not leaving a threat? How are people being harmed? And is that really realistic? I think eventually they were going to run out of money. Eventually they were going to run out of gas and steam. And so I think approaching it from that argument doesn't really work. But I will give them that probably, if it was me, I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have used those words. Because like I saw in And like you guys saw in the United States, they copycatted us and they did their own convoy. You guys remember that? They went to Washington, D.C., blocked off some major, uh, I think it was major highways and stuff. But then all of a sudden, we didn't hear about it anymore. Now, why didn't we hear about it anymore? That's what I want to know. So this is an article from the States, CNET. Trucker protest U.S. convoy coming to an end. Right? You guys remember this, right? But one of the things I remembered was one of their representatives in particular. Now, there was a few, but one of the more popular guys was Ted Cruz, a representative that sat down with them, listened to their concerns. Now, I don't think he promised anything. I think the only thing he promised was, I hear you, and you have a point, and I'm going to use his vote or his powers to make change. And then all of a sudden, we stopped hearing about it. I know I did. I never heard about it. After I heard Ted Cruz, he was actually in one of the trucks. He was on a live stream with somebody protesting with them. And then they sat down and had this conversation with a lot of the same doctors and scientists that were with the truckers, the convoy organizers. And then the truckers just disappeared over there. It's because they had their voices heard, and that would have been the case in Canada. Now, what if they said that? What if the trucker said that? I think that would have been better wording to say, we're not leaving until you acknowledge our voices, like at least have a conversation with us. I think that would have been fine. But I'm sure that's a controversial subject, which I'll see what you guys think of it in the comments. Chris Freestone says, I can't figure out how to send you that link, man. I'm an idiot. That's all right. Well, if it's easier, send it through Facebook. I'll grab it on Messenger. Just look me up, Brandon McCaskill, where we were chatting. Here, I'll send you a little a message to awake that chat a bit. I'll just say, yo. And then if you can, just send it right through that same thread. Cool. Steve Fournier says, remember this started with just 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Look how far they stretched out. Yeah. Christopher said, I know, I forgot his name. Yeah, I don't advertise my name too much. Brandon McCaskill. Yeah. Let me check out Rumble real fast. Make sure you guys. Okay, we got Greg Firstay, Catherine McKinney, rumored that $93 billion in her agency is unaccounted for. Who got the money? What's that in reference to? I'm not sure I know that name. Catherine McKenna? Let me know who that is. Yeah, Brando on the go, I believe. I'm not on Facebook. Yeah, it's Brandon McCaskill on Facebook. Send me a message. Thanks, buddy. Right on. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to cover because here's the thing. Because obviously there's two sides to this story. One's true and one's not. But we all have our biases, right? 100%, I want this court case, this federal court case to come through in favor of the truckers. That's my bias because I was there I wasn't there physically, but I was in the fight every moment of it and watching every detail unfold. And that's where my bias is. I acknowledge that. But with that, I think it's healthy, and I do this all the time with acknowledging where my bias is. I try to step back from the situation and ask, where can I be more objective, more open-minded, and be truthful, even though it may hurt me to be so. So, in other words, if there's something that comes up on our side, if it's true, we need to own it. That's why I just mentioned. I think it'd be worth, or I think it would have been worth rewording that memorandum. I don't think that was the wisest thing to say, even though I don't think I don't think it equals to an insurrection. I just think it was poorly worded. I think it was like a lack of understanding of how the law works exactly. But it just didn't help us any. It didn't help our movement any. Um, so stuff like that. Um, and here's another situation. So remember back during the protests, there was complaints that came on the mainstream medias of truckers stealing food from homeless people. Right now, I wanted to look at what the truth was. What was the truth? And if they did, I would have said that was wrong. That was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. I would have said that. But the truth ended up being that they didn't. There was no there was no evidence to show that they did. At least the truckers that were part of the convoy, because they had an overabundance of food. In fact, they took their overabundance of food and donated to that very homeless shelter that tried to smear them in the news. After hearing about that, they said, "Oh, we got tons of food. Let's take it over and show some kindness to these people that were being mean to us." Um, so I say that because I don't see that effort. I don't see that effort on the other side. People that hold the uh, the idea that this is that these were truckers that were trying to overthrow the government, or that they were being insensitive to horns honking. I don't see an attempt to step back from their bias and be honest about the things that aren't true. Maybe you guys have seen that. Maybe you've seen an attempt at someone trying to be fair, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Ned Tunes Rock. He says, Chris Freestones suck at this. That's what Trudy said. The truckers fed the homeless. Exactly. So much for a neutral media coverage. They misled the Canadian people. I saw a video where a homeless guy handed some food back saying, I have too much. Please give this to another who needs it. There you go. Chris Freeson says, sent that. All right. Awesome. So I'll share that. Vikram says, homeless, we're being fed. Yes. All right. So next, Chris sent me, oh, Chris, you sent it sideways. That's funny. Let me see if I can rotate it for you. See if I can do that. I think I can. Let me open it up. I have the technology, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I can't. Oh, here we go. Rotate. There we go. All right. So let me share. My screen. I want to be able to share. It's okay, Chris. That's all good. It's all good. So let me stop that and open this. Share my entire screen. I think that's what I want. All right, now you guys can see my whole back end now. So here's a letter. I think you can see this. Now Chris and his wifey were given this letter. It wasn't sent to them. My understanding, it wasn't sent to them, but their entire neighborhood was given this letter in their mailbox. It says, "Dear neighbors, you may have noticed since February that there is a new flag flying on our street, Tuxedo Avenue North. It is a black flag with a white diagonal stripe running through it." A lot of you guys know where this is going. "We wanted to take a moment to inform you of its meaning, if you don't already know. This flag is the symbol of a violent white supremacist militia going by the moniker Diagolon. Diagolon started as an online conspiracy theory fringe group espousing Holocaust denial homophobic, anti immigrant, and white supremacist views. They have moved off the internet, bringing their hateful message into the mainstream by working on the 2021 Federal People's Party of Canada, the PPC, election campaign, and in recent months, the Ottawa Truckers Convoy. 4 members were also arrested at the Coutts border crossing in Alberta with guns and ammunition. They have been charged with conspiracy to commit murder. The militia is far right and promotes an accelerationist ideology. Using violence, they seek to destroy the current order to build one in their own image. As the Anti Hate Network says, their goals are ultimately fascist, to use violence to take power and strip rights away from people who do not meet their purity tests based on ideology, race, and gender. The other flag that has been flying at the same house is the red ensign or ensign. This flag looks very similar to the Ontario flag and was the national flag of Canada before the maple leaf was made the official flag in the 1960s. In recent years, this flag has been adopted by the Proud Boys, a now banned terrorist organization in Canada, and other anti-immigrant and far-right protesters. They and others have chosen to fly the flag to remember a time when Canada was overwhelmingly white as a nostalgic memory and an aspiration as to what they believe Canada should become. These flags represent a belief that we are not equal in our humanity, and we should preserve a hierarchy with violence to those that don't fit in. This is not a world that we want or think that others should have to face. After 2 incredibly difficult years and only more uncertainty on the horizon, frustration, anger, and fear are only natural. However, we need to be cautious of people manipulating our fears to turn us against our neighbors. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Coworkers and community for some perceived difference. We are all just trying to get by, and it is only when we act and work together that we are able to make a world that is more just, fair, and unkind. I feel like Justin Trudeau reading this. Fighting the kind of hate being promoted is not easy, but here are a couple of small things you can do. Let me lift up on this here. I can't. Number one, I don't see the whole letter, but this is number one. Place a sign in your yard. Make it clear that we all belong. Let your neighbors know that. So I'm assuming put pride flags. Put pride flags on your yard. All right. So let's read him and his wife's response to that letter. And they put this in everybody's mailbox. They said, "Hi, everyone. We're the Freestones, the house flying the Diagolon flag. Yes, we have flown the Canadian red ensign as a tribute to those who have served in World War I, World War II, and Korea. We also fly the Canadian flag and the New Brunswick provincial flag. This is Canada. We have that freedom. Please do your own research on Diagolon. You will discover it is a community full of friendly and diverse people. It all started as a joke, nothing more. A fictitious country starting from Alaska, down through Alberta and Saskatchewan, then Montana, and all the way through to Texas and Florida. And lo and behold, that forms a diagonal line. A time-traveling plastic goat is the vice president. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for being great neighbors the last 18 years. Oh my gosh. Classy response. Classy response. But talk about dedication to that letter. Super dedicated. It's like they did research, but they didn't. They put more effort into it than research. Let's put it that way. At the bottom, they said not to say hello to us. So that part was missing off of that. You only shared a little bit of it, but that's I'm laughing because it's sad, not because I actually think it's funny, but oh, guys. All right, and then you shared the story with the security agency. What's the acronym for the CSIS? Agents came to his door over this complaint of having this flag, and you welcomed them in. Chris welcomed them in. They had beers and they chatted. And Chris said they were really nice guys just trying to do their job. Oh my gosh. I know I've said that the soul of Canada has died, but it's like the mind of Canada has died as well. I hope your neighbors see this stream. I hope they do, because I'm laughing at them. I'm laughing at them. All right. What are you guys saying here? Roger Langgill says crime rate went to zero when the Freedom Convoy, were in Ottawa most. Yeah, that's right. They wore matching shirts and passed them out for a couple. uh, they wore matching shirts to go pass them out. Like, that sounds like a cult. Roger says it was a joke. Yeah. What a bunch of hooey. Whoever wrote that is mindless and doesn't have a clue that they were played by a simple joke. That's exactly right. They were played. They were played. Sounds like a form letter written and distributed by Katie Telford and the PMO. Yeah. What's the date, by the way? She's supposed to testify soon. I think before April 13th. Roger Langell says those guns at the Alberta border were confiscated at the neighboring town, not at the demonstration. There's stuff to come out about that too, right? Because there's a woman that had a recording on them. I can't remember her name, with the RCMP, something that went down. I don't know the full story. Those guns arrived at the demonstration in an RCMP truck, the same one you can see in the background with the table set up behind it. Yeah, that's such a great experience that you and your wife shared. Oh. Vikram says they were trying to discredit the freedom movement. They needed to plan, invent, and find dirt and report falsely about it. What a pathetic government we have in charge with Trudeau. Yes, sir. Oh. Roger says, you might remember the Canadian spy agency assistant, I don't know how to say that, on CBC Live the day before, along with an American spy who was on CTV Live at the exact same time, claiming we American right-wing terrorists. I don't remember that. I don't remember it, but sounds about right. At the bottom, we read that one. The assistant director of the Canadian spy agency testified live on CBC that we were American right-wing terrorists. Ruth says, wow. Yeah, CSIS. I can't believe that they send agents to your house over a comedy group's flag. I wonder if you'd probably know if Jeremy McKenzie knows about that story, because I think he'd get a chuckle out of that. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. At the inquiry, the assistant director sat beside the director of the Canadian spy agency as he testified against us. She was speaking to the director while doing so, the same woman who was on CBC Live. Okay. Carol says, thank you. Not sure who you're thanking, but you're welcome. Limby says, that woman you speak of, I can't recall her name either, but she recorded RCMP talking about planting guns in her home while she was in custody. That's what I'm referring to. Yeah. Dirty stuff. I think there's a lot of dirty stuff to come out. All right. So I want to close this up. Make sure I covered that. Okay, we're good there. Good there. Yeah, I think we can move on to Mr. Donald Trump. What do you guys think of this whole fiasco with Donald Trump, all this drama, him getting indicted? I mean, he saw it coming with whatever leak that happened and whatever intel he got that showed him he was going to be, well, he said arrested, but he's been indicted. What do you guys think? I think obviously it's all very silly, very politicized. And I've been watching some interviews of James O'Keefe, formerly worked for Project Veritas. He's doing his own thing now because they booted him after he exposed Pfizer. But he was downtown New York getting all these journalists' reaction to this indictment, and everybody he asked was like, "Oh, I hope it sticks. We know it's nothing, but we hope it sticks because this guy, Orange Man bad." Like, it was just embarrassing. It's so embarrassing to watch, and I think it's so embarrassing that even people on the left are saying, "Don't embarrass us. Like, don't pursue this. Let's wait for something that's a little bit more, conspicuous and easier to muddy." Because at least with things like the Ukrainian call, they could call in witnesses and they could call in all this stuff to make it cloudy and make it seem real, even though they knew it was BS from the start. That wasn't an opportunity here. I think this whole Stormy Daniels thing is kind of that ship has sailed. And a lot of even the Democrats recognize that. Even CNN, if CNN is starting to say, you don't have anything here, you're in trouble. You are in trouble as a Democrat or as a Trump hater. LMB says Trump is being railroaded. Chris says, we drank beer and talked bunk. It was cool. They did express concern about the China thing, though. Yeah. Such an interesting situation. OMG, O'Keefe Media Group is James' new shtick. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He built Project Veritas from the ground up as just this nobody. I won't say nobody, but this guy that just didn't have any training, and he just picked up a microphone and started exposing people. And then they grew so big that they needed a board, and then the board votes him out. I don't get that. I don't get it, but I'm happy that he's still doing it. He's still he's under O'Keefe Media Group, OMG. He's going to do very, very well by himself, I think. TS says Trump indictment is a sideshow, hiding Jamie Dimon investment in Epstein. Yeah. This Bragg fella. It's gonna, I mean, that's what he campaigned on, right? That he was going to take Trump down. So he found the criminal before he found the crime. So it's going to be very interesting when the truth comes out that this guy was full of it. Oh man. I couldn't do that. I couldn't put myself in the public knowing something is just bunk. Ned Tunes Rock says, sorry, gang, I'm in the middle of recording. Just took a break. Keep the faith. Recording? You're recording some rock and roll there, buddy? That'd be cool. Vikram says they want to eliminate him as a candidate because he will win in 2024. They know it. With a criminal record, he can't run for the presidency. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the obvious reason that they were doing it. But even people like Bill Maher, they're like, don't do this. You're adding fuel. You're adding fuel to his base. Debbie Barrett says, I think the small little snowball will turn into a boulder or he will have a heart attack. The best scenario for all would be the heart attack. I'm not sure what that's referring to. The small little snowball. Who's that? I've never heard that reference before. Roger Langill says Trump was the first one who openly stood up and supported us when he gave his speech in New York City declaring his love for the truckers and the Freedom Convoy. It's true. I remember that. Chris Freeston, best case to Ontario. Yeah. Bragg will end up disbarred over his idiocy. It's all a show to keep us from focusing on the Biden crime family. I believe it. All right, so this is from Politico. The Trump indictment reveals more about our politics than it does about the ex-president. Donald Trump has been indicted, and everyone wants to know, what does it really mean for America? Let's zoom in. Oh, you guys go blind. The politics of Trumpism have long combined norm violations and convention-breaking behavior with standard politics of the day, hyper-partisanship, and a political establishment that responds to the incentives of the environment around them. The narratives that are emerging around Trump's indictment are no exception. Commentators consistently emphasize two features: the unprecedented nature of the indictment and its place in the longer arc of Trump's political career. Trump himself referred to that arc when he referred to his trip down the Golden Escalator in 2015 to announce his presidential candidacy, claiming that a witch hunt against him had begun then. Excuse me. Excuse me. All right, where was I? The unprecedented. Nope, that's not where I was. Yep. The unprecedented nature of its indictment and its place in the longer. Yeah, okay, cool. Trump himself referred to that arc when he referred to his trip down the. Yeah, cool. Which is a consistent anti-Trump conservative David French referred to this moment in an interview with Ezra Klein that aired before the indictment as well. And the real failure that we have seen in the Trump presidency, going from when he came down the escalator, was a large-scale failure of moral courage time and time again. Yeah. Whole lot of drama that I don't really care about, if I'm being honest. I just wanna get to the end and, expose them for who they are, just liars and opportunists, to be honest with you. Bragg will end up disbarred over this idiocy. It's all a show to keep us from focusing, on yeah, okay, we already read that. Yeah. Later, guys. Great job, man. Like and share. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate, buddy. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so let's recall the Steele dossier was completely made up and fabricated by Hillary Clinton in an effort to discredit Trump. She needs some serious jail time for that. She does. Debbie Barrett, Trump's legal problems starting out small and getting bigger. Snowball to a boulder. Okay, so let's go back to what you said. I think the little snowball will turn into a boulder, or he will have a heart attack. The best scenario for all would be the heart attack. Okay, I still don't like, what crimes are you talking about? Because I think we can talk about, like, election, what do you call those, misdemeanors or, like, little infractions, things that I don't see how you could blame him if he wasn't aware of them. Because if he's got campaign managers and campaign superintendents that take care of things like that, and they were responsible, how does that make Trump a criminal? Or even if it's business, he's got a lot of business in different states, so I think it's a lot to expect one man to understand every rule and every rule book. So I think you got to be more specific on what you're talking about. Because even though I don't morally agree with the guy's done a lot of dirtbag things, in my opinion. I don't think paying off a porn star is illegal, unless they can prove it was done with campaign finances, which is the question, right? So I think that's the giant question mark here. Again, I am not a diehard Trump fan. I don't morally protect the guy. I think he's done a lot of scumbag things in his life. But I'm not going to hang someone if they're not guilty. Put it that way. I'm not into that. I'm not into that just because I disagree with someone morally. All right. Vikram says the key focus should be the Biden crime family, including kickbacks from Ukraine. Oh, heck yeah. We all need to care about what happens in the U.S. because it affects the rest of the world. Canada first. Yeah. Well, 80% of our trade is with the United States. They're deeply influential to Canada. So yeah. Anyways, I'm going to move on from Trump. And Vikram says war is big business, and a prolonged war in the Ukraine will deplete Russia resources while making our allies rich. Raj Brodeur says, I think it's all a distraction to keep us from looking at what's going on with the downfall of the financial system and corruption. Yeah, well, there's so much distractions going on. There's always something more important to be focused on, right? I find that increasingly so. But yeah. But since it's today is Easter Monday, happy Easter, by the way. If I didn't say that already, I hope you guys had a great time celebrating the holiday. If hopefully you had some time with your family. Um, and I wanted to bring this up because in the spirit of Easter and um, because we seem to be experiencing in our world today and in our own country this whole backwards, deluded, demented, evil, uh, evil execution of our justice system, of what's right, of what's morally right, of what's lawfully right. So I was going to read to you guys because I do devotions every I try to do it every day. But reading through the crucifixion story, I'm actually finding parallels to what we're going through today in terms of the mob mentality and politics and leaders and falsely accusing people and the truth and all this. So I thought I'd just take the time to read through it. So if you guys aren't comfortable with me reading the Bible, then now is the time to skedaddle because you don't have to sit here and listen to it. But I wanted to read it just in the spirit and support of what this holiday means for Easter, and I feel it's right on topic with what we want to talk about. All right, so let me catch up with your comments, and then we'll jump into that. Roger says the whole executive office of the American justice system needs to be held accountable for this. Otherwise, it is never going to end. Yes, step by step. I hear you, Roger. I really do. I really do. Vikram says happy Easter also. Yes, cleaning the countries up. Agreed. All right, so I like to read. Mark and Matthew because the thing with the you'll find if you're a gospel reading person is that specifically the gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll find that they actually complement one another with details. There's different details that the other one doesn't mention, but it makes a fuller picture. So I like to read a couple at the same time. So let's try to figure out where I want to start here. So obviously everybody knows the Last Supper and Judas agreeing to betray Jesus. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So these priests were Jewish people. Jesus was a Jewish man. So you got to understand there was these poor Jews and then these uppity up, well-educated Jews that felt they just were better than everybody and they wore the fancy robes, and they're the ones that hated Jesus. Because here was this guy in rough clothes preaching to the poor, people that they considered disgusting. And so Judas is saying, "How much will you give me if I turn him over to you?" And then it says, from then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. So then we got the Last Supper, which is very, very famous. And then Jesus mentions while they're eating, he says, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to the man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Woo-hoo! Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." And he said, "You've said so." You said it. You said it, man. So while they were eating, Jesus took bread and then gave thanks. He broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he gave thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many of the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, you will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. So then they go out, and this is Jesus predicts Peter's denial. because Peter, he was one of his closest friends, and he said, "Everybody's gonna basically turn their back on me." And Peter's like, "Whoa, come on, Jesus, we're best friends. I would never turn my back on you." And he says that even if all fall away, I'll never, I never will. And Jesus says, "I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." So then they go to the Garden of Gethsemane. We all know this story where he goes to pray with his disciples, and he has this heart-wrenching conversation with God saying, "God, if you can," he says, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away from me, unless I drink it, may your will be done." So he's like bargain, and I'm laughing. I'm not laughing to be rude. I hope you guys know that. Um, he's saying, "God, if there's a way out of this, show me that way. But if there isn't, I'm willing to do what you want me to do." And that's when Judas comes, says, "There he is over there. Go get him. He's all yours." So Jesus is arrested, and then they drag him. They drag him before the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin was, again, these Jewish scholars. There was the Sadducees and the Pharisees, these religious scholars that were in charge. They were the mighty ones. They had a lot of influence. They had, I mean, there was the Romans. There was a Roman occupation. They were like the police force, and but they seemed to, and this is consistent with all the outsourced history as well, that between the Romans and the Jewish leaders, they always seemed to want to work with each other to maintain peace, but at the same time keep their dominance in their own areas. So they butted heads a lot, the Sanhedrin and the Romans, but Caesar was in charge ultimately. King Herod was, I think he came a little bit later, or actually no, it could have been at the same time. But anyways, they dragged him. They dragged Jesus in front of Caiaphas. He was the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. So here they're cross-examining him. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus. Sound familiar? And by the way, I'm not comparing Trump to Jesus. He is a man that is filled with dirty, rotten mistakes in his life. But we're seeing a whole lot of false evidence against a lot of people happening. So the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. It's the same. They're dealing with the same stuff back then as we are now. Politics, lies, agendas, right? Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, I am to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. Now, every time I read that, but Jesus remained silent, in my head, it's because when I hear all these political theories and these arguments people use that are just so incoherent, but and most times based on false um, false pretenses from the previous thing that they made up and lied about before, and it's just this unraveling of incoherent positions. Like, I at times just I don't wanna say anything. It's just like, "Oh, I gotta backtrack to in order to share what's true with you, I gotta backtrack your whole perspective because you screwed up on your perspective way back here. I can see it, but it's gonna take a year and a half to unravel it for you." So when I read that, that's kind of what comes to mind. It's just like, I'd rather just not say anything right now. But I don't know what was going on in his head, but But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. Because that was blasphemy, right? The Jewish people. They couldn't even, I'm pretty sure, old Jewish tradition, you couldn't even write down the name of God because that was like, it was such a holy name and it was so blasphemous to do so. So here they're challenging him. Did you say that you are the Son of God? And then Jesus said, you have said so. But I say to you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. So then they start screaming. The high priest tore his clothes and said, he has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death, they answered. This is the interesting part, this next part. Verse 67, they spit in his face. So listen to this. They spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you? So that's a bizarre thing to say. Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you? What does that mean? That's just kind of an odd thing to say. But if you go on over to Mark, the same scene, but he's describing it differently from his perspective. They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some begin to spit at him. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, prophesy. So that makes Matthew makes sense because they blindfolded him, prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you? So they're hitting him, and he can't see who's hitting him. And so they're mocking him, saying, if you're a prophet, you can tell us, even if you can't see. So that makes sense. And that's why I think it's cool to take the different angles of the same story being told through the different witnesses. And a lot of historians use that as points of reliability to show how reliable the Gospels are. I think that's pretty cool. Anyways, so let's go on over to Peter. This is when he disowns Jesus. And we see a lot of this. And I think Peter is a perfect representation of people with no spines, people that just go with the flow, that have no courage to stand up for what is right. I think that he's a representation of that. And I think there's probably been a bit of that in all of us at one point in our lives, but I think it's interesting. It says, now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, and she said, you also were with Jesus of Galilee. So Jesus is being examined, and they're beating him up, and everybody's hearing about this. And so she's saying, hey, I saw you with Jesus. But he denied it before them all. He said, I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man, he said. After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them. Your accent gives it away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. So that's number 3. Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. He said, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. Yeah. And then they account when Judas hangs himself because he knew he just double-crossed the most important man in history. But this is the part where I wanted to kind of focus in on. This is Jesus before Pilate. So the Jewish leaders, by their laws, they can't put someone to death like that, and especially during Passover. So they handed him over to the authorities, which was Pilate. And Pilate's like, I don't want anything to do with your drama. But he had an interest in keeping the peace and keeping things fruitful in Jerusalem. So he's having a conversation with Jesus. Are you the king of the Jews? He asks. You have said so, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the people, or by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So Barabbas was this murderer that they had in prison, and it was a custom to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus, Barabbas. Jesus was a common name back then, by the way. Or Jesus, who was called the Messiah. For he knew it was out of self-interest they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I've suffered a great deal today in a dream because of it. Okay, so that's his wife trying to convince Pilate not to have anything to do with this. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and have Jesus executed. Which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. So these are people, this crowd of people. This isn't like a crowd of people at a rock concert that they don't know who Jesus is. Jesus was in these streets, healing these people, preaching to these people. He healed the blind. He healed the sick. The paralytics stood up and walked. They knew who this guy was, and they loved him. But as soon as the heat was turned on a little bit with these Sadducees and these Pharisees, that's made it like they were the voice piece. In my mind, I'm paralleling them to the media. Like they're the loudest. You know, you're a bigot or you're blasphemous if you follow this. You're a terrible person if you follow what this guy's doing, or if you're listening to it, or if you're perpetrating it. And yet these people that knew Jesus, they're shouting, Barabbas. We want Barabbas instead of Jesus. Take Jesus. So they answer Barabbas. Then Pilate asks, well, what should I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah? And they all yell, crucify him. In other words, just get him out of the picture. Like he's irrelevant. He's irrelevant. Let's just do what's popular and what's important because we'll all feel better about it. And we'll all be, this group mob. The mob will get what it wants. And even Pilate's not this. Pilate, he's the one in charge of crucifying people that he just doesn't disagree with. Like he wasn't a good dude. And he's even asking, why? Like what crime has he committed? But they shouted all louder, crucify him, crucify him. They kept getting louder and louder. And these are, again, his own people saying this. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead of an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. He said, I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. So the Jews didn't want to make the decision because it was Pilate's decision to do as the authorities. But then we have Pilate saying, you guys are free to do with what you wish. So all the people answered, his blood is on us and our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. And obviously we all know that story. Taken up the hill and crucified. From noon until 3 p.m, darkness came over all the land. About 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine, vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. That's interesting. These people that had hope at the very last, because they believed him to be the Son of God. They saw him do miracles. They saw him do impossible things. Like they're his same disciples that were here with him saw him walk on water and tell the sea to stop, that he had command and dominion over the seas. So they're seeing him bleed out and die. So they obviously have the faith to believe, oh, maybe Elijah's going to come and save him. So it's interesting that they had that hope, and in their own minds, they were thinking of ways of how he was going to come out of this on top. But eventually they all gave up, and I believe it was the Apostle John that stayed with him the longest. And then Joseph of Arimathea took his body and wrapped him up and used his own tomb to put Jesus in. So the next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.'" So this is interesting. To me, this is, well, obviously super fascinating. Oh, I just lost my spot. There we go. So we have these same Pharisees, I call them snakes. They're snakes, these religious mucky mucks that started all this drama. They went to Pilate and they said, "Sir, we remember that while he was still alive, that the deceiver said, 'After 3 days, I will rise again.'" So that was Jesus prophesying. He said, "Tear down this temple." He was talking about his body, "and in 3 days he will rebuild it." So, and he was talking about his body, and he was essentially telling them that if you kill me, I'm going to come back. So that's what they were scared of. They went to Pilate and said, "Please give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." So they're scared. They don't want this, that they think the disciples would try something like this. So Pilate said, "Take a guard. Go make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. And I think we all know what happened. 3rd day, women came to the tomb. The guards had fainted. The stone is rolled away. And the tomb was empty. The tomb was empty. Jesus has risen. After the Sabbath, at dawn, on the 1st day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I've told you so." That's it. That's it. I mean, I could sit here and read the whole Bible for you guys if you want, but that's Matthew chapter 27 and 28, and Mark 14. So just wanted to, I think it's fascinating how just the parallels between what they were facing then and what we're facing now. It seems to be the same mentalities that people have. Roger says, "The people I know in Russia are close to Mr. Putin. They are Ukrainians." Peter the Great was a Tartar from Ukraine. The admiral of the Russian Navy is Ukrainian. Can you name a country that isn't in turmoil? We need to pray. It's true. It's very, very true. Very true. There's no escape from what we're going through right now. It seems to be a worldwide thing. Vikram Singh says, we need to pray and stand up. United, form a shield wall. Read Karl Marx's book on how to conquer a democracy. Sir, we are changing to constitutional law and all layers and judges will be retrained again, so nothing to worry, my friend. Peter became the first pope, just saying. Yeah. Yeah. Because Christ arose, we have hope. Steve says the Holy Bible is as relevant today as the day it was written. It is. The same kind of blood coursing through our veins, right? That seems to be, I don't know, we're getting to the end of this stream, and I thank you guys for sticking around with me, but just as kind of a subject of conversation here. But it seems like when we come farther and farther away from the ancient truths, that's what I would call the Bible, is an ancient truth that is just so full of beauty and meaning. Like I could have sat there and read that forever with you guys because there's just so much to take from them, right? The more we stray from it, the more problems we seem to face in our culture and in our day-to-day lives. I mean, that's this whole woke agenda. Their whole idea is to deconstruct the nuclear family, to take away old ways of thinking, in their terms, old ways of thinking. And it's as if they think that finally, after years, centuries and centuries of people deriving their values from ancient texts like that, it's like they believe finally we are the generation that got it right. We're the ones that know the truth. And so we need to scrap what we've always done, things that have worked. Now, I'm not saying people haven't abused it and that people haven't taken the Bible and smacked people over the head with it, because that's not right. I think there's a wrong way to read the Bible, and I think there's a right way. And I think when we apply the right ways that the Bible was meant to be applied, we're better for it. I think humanity flourishes when we actually read it for what it's actually saying, when we don't project our own interpretation on it. I think that's where the danger comes from. There's too many churches, too many believers that put their own flavor to it, right? They put their own spin on it, their own definition of some words or different interpretations. But yeah, anyway, I hope that gave you something to think about. I enjoy something like that, and I'm actually entertaining the idea of not only talking about politics. I'm going to make a separate channel because I want to start talking about, maybe even talk about just like a Bible study type of thing, just kind of diving in to some of these things and trying to tie it into politics. Because one thing I always say is that politics is downstream from culture. Or is that what I say? Culture is downstream from politics? One of the two. But what's downstream from politics is also religion, or what you believe, your worldview, whatever it is you believe, because that reflects your politics. So if we start talking about and have good conversations about where we stand, and I don't even like using the word religion, I just where we derive our right and wrongs from, right? Because a lot of us will say, and I'll be talking about this briefly here in a moment, but where we derive our moral standards from, because a lot of us act on morality, but the question is, where does that morality come from? If we're an atheist, if we're saying we're an atheist, that we're just clumps of cell that accidentally exploded millions of years ago, and now we have arms and legs and the ability to rationalize things, morals don't really mean anything. They don't. It's just survival of the fittest. It doesn't, like, if you're an atheist and there's just no purpose, that means Hitler should just do what he wanted because he's more powerful than us. So what's the big deal? Survival of the fittest. He's not wrong. We can't say he's wrong in an atheistic worldview. So that's the type of stuff I want to talk about. Where do we derive these things from? There's got to be an anchoring point. And are we making them up as we go? Because if Hitler was here beside me, he'd be like, Brandon, I don't know what a German accent is, but he'd say, I did a really good thing. I did a really good thing. I cleaned the world of Jews. To me, that's good. To me, that's right. And I can't say he's wrong because that's his standard of good. And that's truly what he believed. He thought he was doing the world a favor. So unless I have an anchor point that says he's wrong, I can't say anything. So anyways, the last thing I want to talk about, and it's in the title of this video, is, are we self-aware? Now, I'll bring this up. A lot of you have probably seen this. The Ontario NDP urges legal protections for drag shows. Drag artists say protests at performances are negatively affecting their livelihoods. Ontario's NDP urged the government Tuesday to create community safe zones that would protect drag artists and LGBTQ communities from harassment and intimidation at their performances. Drag performances have been targeted by organized protests across the United States, but also here at home, said Kristen Wong-Tam, who is putting forward a private members bill to designate 100-meter zones around show venues. Okay? Now, I've spoken on the channel before of how I straight up disagree with this whole entire movement, that I think it's dangerous for kids. I think it's specifically drag queens. I think it's ideological grooming. But I think there's some reflection that we can do on this subject. And one of the stances I've taken over the past few months is, because it happens locally, we have these drag queen story hours that happen and drag queen shows for adults, which to me, adults, do what you want. Whatever entertainment you want to do it. You're an adult. You make that decision. Same with, being transgender. If that's something you want to do it. That's always been my point of view. But as soon as you start talking about kids, as soon as you start, kids is a different subject. But when there's drag queen story hour happening at our private business here in Sarnia, Ontario, it's a private owner, private business, and they host these shows. And these parents willingly come with their kids. I want to say, do what you want there. It's private. The parents are making the decisions. To me, that's no different than a family sitting in their living room with the Netflix on watching a drag movie. I have no say of what they do in their own home and their own private business. To me, I see that as the same thing. But despite that, we still have protests at the local private business here in Sarnia, which I support. I support people's right to protest. If they're being peaceful, they have that right. So I want to make that clear. I support their right to protest. But I think it's unwise and maybe a little unstrategic to go at them for their whatever goes on in the privacy of their home or their private business. And I'm not saying I disagree with them, but I'm saying in a tactical sense, because all you're doing is driving them to act like this, where they're trying to put forward legislation to completely make it illegal, to trample on your rights completely. So my stance is, unless they start coming to the private sector, where it's like public libraries funding it. Now they are starting to do that, especially in the States. I don't know if there is in Canada, if there's public venues that are hosting this stuff. That's what I'm against, because that's my tax dollars. If it's a public library, and like if I showed up to my local library with my son, because we love going to the library. My son loves reading, loves books. If we were to walk in there, the children's library, and we saw that, I wouldn't want him to see that. I wouldn't want him to see that. That's infringing on my rights because I invest into that, well, through my tax dollars, into that library for my son and my kids to enjoy. So that's what I'm against. Um, but what I want to kind of hammer home here, and I'll get to your guys' comments here. You guys, by the way, have always you always have great things to say. I appreciate you guys in the comments. Um, and this comes from a conversation I had with a local person here. He's just, to put it bluntly and as nicely as I can, he's really demented. Just some of the things he says, and especially the things he posted over the Easter holiday, just inappropriate things about Jesus, wearing a dress and telling stories to kids. It ruffled a lot of feathers in our area. But one of the things he said was, I think I need to backtrack here because last week I talked about this local organization that represents the LGBT crowd, and this specific person accused me. She tagged my name and a few others, and she said people like Brandon McCaskill, his rhetoric, his beliefs is what leads, and I'm paraphrasing, is what leads to the LGBTQ community being shot and gunned down. That's what she linked it to. People like me. And I came out and I said, that's irresponsible. That's dangerous. If you're telling people they're being hunted all the time, of course they're going to shoot up a Christian school because they think they're being attacked. And I said, you guys, this person has to be careful with her rhetoric. But just the other day, this person said to me, he said, well, are you guys being careful with your rhetoric, the things you're saying? Because you have to understand, people in the LGBTQ plus community, they're looking at you and hearing you say things like they're grooming children and they're doing all these. I've even heard people say they're pedophiles to children. Is that type of stuff not maddening enough for your side to get riled up and resort to violence? Because I have to admit, it has happened. It has happened on our side where we get too riled up and someone of their community gets violently assaulted. It does happen, unfortunately. Now, for me, at least I can speak for myself. I do not condone violence. I always say on this type of stuff, you have to talk it out. You have to have civil dialogue. But let's put this in perspective. If someone on their side let's say they got killed, they got shot down by one of our people that just went berserk. They got so mad and they just did something stupid. I would immediately say that person's stupid. They cross the line. As soon as you resort to violence, you've lost. That's my perspective. I would say that. But what I would also say is I understand that person's anger on our side. The reason why I understand is because they are ideologically grooming people, like I said. Now, we do need to be more mindful of the way we're saying things. Like if you're saying grooming, if you're using the word grooming, I think you better be very clear on what you're talking about. Because for me, I can't say grooming talking about, trying to molest children, like, gain a little kid's trust so that you can molest them. That's not what I mean. And that's how they're taking it. That's why I always say ideologically grooming. This idea that if they just, get close enough with their ideologies and try to make it okay and completely normal, that they're going to start to mold these young kids' minds in order to get them believing the things that they believe as grown adults. I mean, this page here. This is the Drag Queen Story Hour website. Michelle T. She's the founder of Drag Story Hour. This is her website. And her mission statement is, the drag Story Hour celebrates reading. Well, let me start that again. Drag Story Hour celebrates reading through the glamorous art of drag. Our chapter network creates diverse, accessible, and culturally inclusive family programming where kids can express, and here's the kicker, their authentic selves. What does that mean? To be their authentic selves and become bright lights of change in their communities. Their vision, we envision a world where kids can learn from LGBTQ plus stories. So LGBTQ plus, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, everything to do with sex, everything to do with adult activities. That's why I'm very specific. That's why I say ideological grooming. I never leave it hanging. I never leave I'm never conspicuous with what I say. It's in today's day and age, you do have to, especially if you're saying things online, I would just caution you. And if you're also going to say these people are pedophiles, you better be ready to back that up. I'm not ready to back that up to say every drag queen is a pedophile. Every drag queen is a groomer. I'm not prepared to do that. But what I am prepared to say, and I can make an argument for, is that they are ideologically grooming young kids. Otherwise, they would, if they were really if this was really about the kids, if they were really passionate about educating kids, they would show up as themselves, as a librarian used to, just this old woman that would read stories about Franklin the Turtle and Arthur. If that was their concern of teaching them the ABCs, then that's different. But I think we just need to be self-aware of how we express ourselves. Because on the flip side of that spectrum where I said I understand the frustration on our side, I understand that it's just like, oh, you want to do something? And that unfortunately leads people to say and do stupid things. The opposite side of that, on their side, on the LGBTQ side, where they're angry and it spews over to shooting up a school or doing anything violent, I can't say I understand that. I can't say I understand their frustration because you have two frustrations going on here. We're frustrated over here justly. We have a reason to be frustrated. And they're frustrated that we're frustrated. That's not a legitimate frustration, in my opinion. So, all that to say, I just urge everybody to be self-aware. A lot of us are. Just be careful with the things we're saying and think through the way we articulate our arguments, our positions. Yeah, that's basically it. So let me shut this and read the rest of your guys' comments. Judy Homer says, hit the like button, folks. God bless you. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. Steve Fournier says, amen. Len Bean, please know that YouTube takes 30% and Rumble takes 20% of all donations. We are not government sponsored. Every dollar helps. Please help support the channel. Thank you. I appreciate that. Steve Fournier says they do the exact opposite of the Bible, which is just evil. Yes, that's my point. It's all about integrity and morality. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Vikram says the 10 Commandments. Yeah. Oh, well, the 10 Commandments were given to us to show us that we need God. Because I don't know about you, but I haven't kept the 10 Commandments. Take me through them. I've completely annihilated all of them. But it just, to me, and the Apostle Paul says that. He says the law was given to us to show us our imperfections. That's why we needed Christ. That's why Christ had to come. If we didn't need him, he wouldn't have had to come. So I think that's the biggest, for a lot of people, that's the biggest shift in their mind that they sometimes just can't get to. It's a pride thing. We think we can make it to heaven on our own. We think we can be good people. When my only motivation for being good is because of what good was done for me. It's a response My goodness is a response to God who did a greater good for me. So I'm nice to people because God was nice to me. It's my way of saying thank you and that I appreciate his sacrifice and his gift. But you're absolutely right. Vikram says, has the goodness of Jesus risen in us? Yes. Theory of evolution is still just a theory. That's a good point. Just a theory. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty I'm still in the kind of the brainstorming phase of what I want to do with a second channel. I don't want to make it a part of this channel because this channel is politics, Canada politics. But I want to do Canada, like talk about our worldview. So I got to think of like, I don't know what I should call it, momentum worldview. I don't know. Maybe I'll put out a poll and you guys can vote on a good name for it. But I think talking about those deeper, more, bringing your guys' personal views and your worldviews to talk about what's true. What can we examine in history and what has worked, what hasn't worked, what doesn't make sense? Because a lot of stuff doesn't make sense. You hear some of the things people say, you're like, oh, it sounds nice, but how do you know that's true? Like, and people say that to me about the Bible, and I love talking about that stuff. How do you, like questions like that? How do you know it's true? Oh, I love talking about it. Love to have that conversation with you. Let's dive in. But yeah, Patrick's Time says recent shooter used him, he pronouns. To be honest with you, I was so confused when that first happened because the police chief said trans. What did he say? Trans woman. And usually in the woke crowd, when you say trans woman, that means a biological man that transitioned to be a woman. So I assumed this was a born to be man that thought he was a girl. And that made sense to me. I was like, oh, yeah, it's usually men that do mass shootings. But then I sort of found out, no, it was a woman that was born as a woman, wanted to be a man. I said, well, why did he call him a trans woman then? So then it was just so confusing. I was one of the ones that fell for it. Roger says, organized disorganization to Jim, just like Karl Marx said. Yeah, organized disorganization. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Another mental leftist. I'm not sure who you're talking about, but just getting caught up with the comments. Wedges, divide and conquer. Yep. Drag queens have been around forever. If they had stayed in their own lane as adult entertainment, they wouldn't be a problem now. Stop sexualizing our children. Yeah, that's exactly right. Rather, Ashnak Jewish miss the K. I'm not sure what that's referring to. First thing Hitler did was empty the mental hospitals and sent them to the ovens along with the Jews. Yeah, disgusting human being. Oh, thank you for the super sticker there, Judy. $2.20. Appreciate that. Yeah. NDP socialists, aka Nazis, using LGBTQ like the brown shirts. Brown shirts were the first to be gotten rid of. That's an interesting point. I am sure it has nothing to do with the pedophile sitting in the president's chair. Grooming is all about normalizing sex and pornography for kids. Yeah. Yeah. My caution is grooming can be taken as actually physically molesting children, like getting to that point. All I'm saying is, and I don't even say my opinion because it doesn't matter. But we need the receipts. We need to show the receipts because we could just say things without it being true. What I can show is, like I just showed you on the website of Michelle T. Drag Story Hour, their mission. That's what they say. Their mission is to give them a space where kids can be their authentic selves at the same time of us telling them about our adult ideas. That sounds like a good space for a kid to go, Mommy, I'm a boy, but I think I want to be a girl. Like that's what they're creating, and that's what I'm against, and that's what I'm getting to. I have the receipts for that. Rej Brajour says, I appreciate your balanced view. I try to be, and I'm fortunate. And this is the value I feel. And I hope people that don't like me watch my streams because there's a lot of people that don't like me. Because I say a lot of blunt things in my local group. I'm more blunt locally because my local politics is what I care about. a lot because my kids are being raised in this atmosphere. Um, but I want people to understand, specifically in my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group that I started called Momentum Sarnia, and I have people from all sides on there, and they're always fighting. It seems like when you go to the site, it seems like everybody's fighting all the time. But the beauty of it is that it's not an echo chamber. There are echo chambers in my community where there's a Facebook page where only one view is tolerated and you're deleted if you say something that they disagree with. I thought that was bogus. So it's just like I took down the moderator uh, rules and just said everything and anything goes. And I said, if anything illegal happens, like threats, contact the police. I said, but freedom of speech, it allows everybody to come out in the open. Even the people on my side that I disagree with, I want them to be exposed so that everybody can hold them to account. And I know they will because the opposing side, the left side, the woke side will come and hold them to account if they're smart enough and if they're willing to have a conversation. So I think that's the most valuable thing um, that group offers, and it gives me a perspective. You just said thank you for your balanced view, but it's thanks to the people that participate because I think it's so important for us to hear the other side, even if we don't agree with it. Just hear it, understand it, absorb it, and so that you can actually step back from your perspective and constantly check yourself. I think that's healthy. I think that's healthy. But thank you for saying that, Reg. I appreciate you. I think that's the first time I've seen your name. I hope you're subscribed. Guys, 40% of the people that watch my stuff, and I get this in my notifications, it says, Brando, 40% of your viewers aren't subscribed. So be sure to tell them to subscribe. So I'm telling you guys now, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It's helping me out tremendously. I've had a jump in subscribers this past week, so I'm pretty excited about that. But please continue to keep that momentum going. That helps me out. Oh, Lynn B, there she is. Momentum methodologies. I like that. Oh man. Now, now I'll think on that one. I'm gonna try to get a few together and see what one stands out. I do like that though. Momentum methodologies. uh, but that's the awkward thing because I do want it to because I'm honestly I don't want it to be a debate. I want it to be a discussion, and I'm going to bring some of my. It's going to be obviously anchored by my beliefs because I'm obviously the host. So I'll think of some more names, but if I can't think of something else, I'm going to keep that. I just got to remember it. Momentum methodologies. That's great. Steve Fournier. Yeah, he says, just remember that we're all sinners, but Jesus died on the cross for our sins. It's up to us to ask for forgiveness and to your best to sin no more. Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I forget who said this. It doesn't matter, but it just rings true. It says, when you chase after God, when you realize and you understand that what was done on the cross was for you, and you're so thankful for that, and you're so, that becomes your focus of being thankful. That's why, for me as a Christian, my prayers have become simpler because every day an adequate prayer becomes just thank you, God, just thank you, like thank you. I don't need to say anything else, just thank you. You don't need my fancy prayers. It's just thank you. But I find that as you become laser focused on that, the human desires for sin become less and less. It shrinks. Your desire for sin shrinks. So people come to me. I've had some interesting conversations over the years, and people say, well, Brandon, I have a habit of swearing, and I notice you don't swear. Are you going to judge me for not swearing? I said, well, you be whoever you want to be. I said, but I'll tell you that when you become a Christian, God starts changing your heart. You're not going to want to swear. It's going to grieve you to swear. You're going to swear and be like, oh man, I need to stop that. And it's not about me and how I feel. So don't do it to please me. But I just tell people, I said, when you find that focus and when you find that love for God to keep pursuing him, the desire for the other stuff, it just shrinks and shrinks. That's the beauty of it. Roger says, no more Stella beers, no more Budweiser. They can keep their, oh my gosh. That's been hitting the internet and, disgusting. Now I don't even drink, so I don't really care, but it's just the attention seeking is, blah, 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 blah. Yuck. Lynn B says, receipts. How about the video of the man on his knees wearing nothing but a bra a G-string twerking to children, or the video of the Dre where the actor simulated sex for children, grooming. Yeah. So that stuff. Yeah, there you go. There's your receipts. There's your receipts. But all I'm saying across the board, because like here locally, our drag queen, she's not provocative. Or he's not provocative, I should say. He's actually very modestly dressed. He doesn't look like a woman. He looks like one of those characters off of the Hunger Games. You remember all the uppity up people, and they wear all the funny wigs? It's very modest. There's nothing showing. So I can't say he's a groomer, not in that sense. It doesn't apply to him. So to me, it's just a losing battle. But I agree with you, Lynn. I've seen those videos. Those are receipts, and that's where that stops. You can prove certain people, but until they're guilty of that, you can't really. I hope that makes sense, but I just want to make sure I can across the board is ideological grooming for each of them. Like I said, otherwise, if it was really about kids, they would have left it alone, left it with the librarians with the geeky glasses and the corded jeans that sat there cross-legged and read Arthur and Ninja Turtles or whatever it is kids read these days. Momentum pathways. Oh, yeah, that's not bad. It's not bad. It's not bad. Right on, guys. Well, thank you guys so much. I enjoyed this stream. It's been, we're past the 2-hour mark for sure, but I appreciate you. Thanks for giving your infinite wisdom and your knowledge on these subjects. And be on the lookout. I usually take bits of this stream and post them throughout the week so they're easier to share. And if you want to watch them again, they're there for you to do. So be on the lookout for those. Again, hit that like button and that subscribe button on the way out. I appreciate you once again. I'm going to run my ad one last time. If you haven't picked up a copy of my book, I started a book a number of years ago, a fictional story about Canada. It's based in Kingston, Ontario. I loved writing the book. There's just so much, there's themes in it that are important to me that I felt were relevant to Canadians today. It's based in like the 1890s Kingston area. So, and thank you, Lynn. I can always count on you to share my stuff. She said, that's how you find my book. And, yeah, I'd appreciate if you guys would pick up a copy and let me know what you think. I'm trying to impact people. I'm trying to encourage people and give them hope for what's to come. I have this feeling that we're about to take a turn for the good, and we just got to keep holding on to those things and keep encouraging one another. Roger says, thank you for your broadcast. I will be back. Thank you, Roger. I hope you stick around. All right, that's it for today. Guys, before I log out here, just go on over to Rumble. Make sure you're subscribed. And in case the lights go out over here, that way you have another source to find me. All right. Take care. Bye for now. Enjoy this last ad. Thank you, Lynn. Take care. A Prayer for Walton Bay, a novel based in the area of Kingston, Ontario in the late 1800s. This story was inspired from the desire to see Canada return to its simple roots after seeing such division during the pandemic in recent years. Available now on Amazon, this book will help fund our efforts here at Momentum Canada, since we are not government funded. Rather than just ask for money, I wanted to give you something wholesome for you to enjoy as well. So place your order today and enjoy a great story for such a time as this.